On today's episode of The Franchise, Wednesday, April 26th, we got recapping last night's NBA playoff games. We had two series winners, and then a really great performance from Trae Young last night. We also got news on a fifth-year option in the NFL, Aaron Rodgers' introductory press conference with the New York Jets, and we are officially one day away from the NFL draft. This is not my real mock draft. That is coming out tomorrow. I'm calling this the WTF Mock. All right, this one's crazy. All right, when we get to it, it's a lot of craziness. It's a lot of random stuff in this mock. It has nothing to do with what I think will happen. It's just let's get crazy with this mock draft today. Before we get into the episode, as always, franchise available YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Amazon Music. You can also find the Twitter. I did it again. I always do it. The Twitter, the TikTok, and Instagram in the description. Very active on Twitter. Getting active on TikTok as well. All right. Let's start here with the NBA games from Tuesday night. First one, Boston Celtics taking on the Atlanta Hawks. This is game 5 of this series. Game 5 of the series. Celtics at home, they have a 3-1 series lead heading into this game. Looking like they're going to end up closing it out, right? No one thinks Atlanta is going to win the series, let alone take this to 6 games, especially without DeJounte Murray, who got suspended for an altercation with one of the referees at the end of Game 4. But Atlanta comes out here and they win this game, 119-117. Trae Young had himself a game. 38 points, 13 assists, 5 for 13 shooting from the three-point range. And he hit the game-winning three-pointer to send Atlanta, to keep them alive, and go back down to Atlanta, State Farm Arena, and potentially take this to 7 games. So Trae Young, after receiving so much criticism, and good amount of it is warranted throughout his career, throughout this season, of him not being a guy that you can rely on to win a championship, that he's an overrated superstar, all of that noise. But last night and through other moments throughout his career, especially in the postseason, he's hit big-time shots. He's had big-time performances to help out his team. And last night was one of them, avoiding elimination. They are going to be eliminated. Right? They were down 117 to 116, 1-point game. There's like 6 seconds left on the clock. Young gets the ball in the backcourt, pulls up, takes 2 steps into the half court, shoots like a 50-foot three-point shot, drains it. Atlanta wins the game. We're going to a Game 6 here for the Hawks. Like I said, without DeJounte Murray, he will be back for this Game 6 in Atlanta. John Collins had 22 points for Boston. Tatum had a down night. Very bad game for Jason Tatum. 19 points, 1 for 10 shooting from 3. Jaylen Brown had 35, 4 for 7 from the three-point range. So I'd expect Boston to win this game, the Game 6. But Atlanta has the momentum right now. They've won the most recent 2 games of this series, Game 4 and Game 5. Now I know Boston has the advantage, right? They've won 3 out of the 5 games. So I'd expect Boston to win, but I've expected Boston to win in 4 and then 5. So I'm expecting them to win in 6. If it goes to 7, Boston's in some serious trouble. All right, next game here. Timberwolves taking on the Nuggets in Denver. Denver won this series in 5, 4-1 in favor of the Nuggets. They won this game 112-109. Anthony Edwards shot a three-pointer to tie the game, go to OT in the fourth quarter, and he misses it. Look, the Minnesota, they had a nice win, Game 4, at home to avoid getting swept. But this team does not match up enough with the Denver Nuggets, right? Jokic, 2-time MVP. You could argue a third, but I think we all are agreeing that this MVP award this season is going to Embiid. But Jokic finishing in the top 3 of MVP this year. Previous 2 MVPs. Nuggets had the best record in the Western Conference. This is such a superior team. Jamal Murray, Michael Porter Jr., Aaron Gordon, KCP on the bench. This team is very deep compared to this Timberwolves team, which I just don't think their roster fits well together, right? Mike Conley is there. He's an older guy that you traded D'Angelo Russell away in that three team deal to pick him up. You traded Jared Vanderbilt. Actually, I think Jared Vanderbilt. Yeah, he was on the Timberwolves, I believe. But you bring in Rudy Gobert, you trade away all of your assets in the offseason, multiple first-round picks, your first-round pick from the draft, Walker Kessler, who's finishing second in Rookie of the Year this year. So you trade a lot away for Gobert, who we've seen throughout his time with Utah Jazz. This guy, when it comes to the postseason, you cannot play him. He's not an offensive threat. He's a liability. I mean, if a team is down in the final minutes of a game, all you have to do is foul Rudy Gobert, get him at the free throw line, and you have a chance to win the game because of how bad offensively Rudy Gobert is. Now, he's going to be decent. I mean, in the playoffs, his defense is not as good as it is in the regular season. But he's going to get boards. He's going to be able to block shots, but he's not a player that you can play in these high-leverage situations. Karl-Anthony Towns disappears in the playoffs. All right, he really does. Every other game in this series, he's been non-existent. This game he had 26 points, 11 rebounds. That's a solid game for Cat, which is something you'd expect for a guy that's your number one, number two option every single game of a playoff series. However, he disappears in the playoffs. I mean, you can just check the stats. He's not an impactful player in the postseason in his limited time in the playoffs. Anthony Edwards is there. He's a guy. He's a dude. But ultimately, Minnesota does not have enough firepower keep up with the Nuggets. And they're going to play Denver. They're going to play the Suns, and we're talking about the Suns right now. Suns win the series against the Clippers in 5 games. Win this game last night, 136-130. Once again, the Clippers without Kawhi, who we'll get to in a second, without Paul George, relying on Russell Westbrook and Norman Powell and all of their bench depth to be the guys to go out there and score the basketball. And when you have the Clippers are an interesting team, right? They have so much depth. They have arguably the deepest team in the postseason, right? But when you're missing Kawhi and Paul George and the guys that you're relying on to be your bench guys and your others, you're asking them to get your 25, 30 points that Paul George and Kawhi get you, you're not going to win the series. Kevin Durant, 31 points, 4 for 6 from 3. Devin Booker had 47 points, 10 assists, 4 for 7 from the three-point range. So Suns, Nuggets will be playing in the second round. We'll talk about the second round once all these series wrap up from the first round. We'll talk about the second round before those series start. But for the Clippers, I wanted to talk about them. All right, Kawhi Leonard tore his meniscus. He's going to be getting surgery. We'll see what his timetable is to return for next season. But the Clippers are in a very interesting spot. Okay, Kawhi has had 3 seasons where he's played with the Clippers, and he hasn't played over 60 games in any of those seasons, 51, 57, 52, and 52. This guy's not been able to play 60 games. He's constantly on load management. He's constantly with random injuries that you don't really see on the court, whether it's ACL, meniscus, quad, knee, ankle, shoulder. It's random injuries with Kawhi Leonard. Paul George, in his 4 seasons with the Clippers, they've both been there the same amount of time, has yet to play over 60 games as well. 48, 54, 31, 56. And then in terms of the playoff success with Kawhi Leonard and Paul George, second round loss to the Denver Nuggets in 6 games. The Western Conference Finals against the Phoenix Suns, they lost that one in 6 games. They missed the playoffs last season completely, and then this season they lost in 5 games to the Suns in the first round. Next season, the Clippers roster is basically going to be the same. Paul George, Kawhi, both under contract until 2025, where they both have player options. Norman Powell is up under contract till 2026. Eric Gordon is making $20 million next season. Marcus Morris, Robert Covington, Batum, Zubac, Bones Highland, Terrence Mann, a lot of guys returning next season for the Clippers. The good thing for them in terms of next season and what they're going to do in the offseason is that Eric Gordon Marcus Morris, Robert Covington, Nicholas Batum, all those guys are on one-year deals. So if the Clippers, they don't have a lot of moves to make. They have no cap space this offseason to bring in an impactful player without trading a Paul George or Kawhi Leonard. Russell Westbrook is going to be a free agent. I don't think they'll bring him back. The Clippers don't have a lot of avenues to improve this team without moving on from Paul George or Kawhi Leonard, which is not going to happen unless one of them requests a trade. Because the thing that Paul George and Kawhi Leonard have is they have the leverage over the Clippers. They have player options in 2025 to opt out and become free agents. And if next season, if the Clippers don't have a successful year, like they don't make it deep into the playoffs or they don't show that this team can actually win a championship, I'd expect Paul George and Kawhi Leonard to test free agency in 2024-25 off-season. I think for the Clippers, you can expect Eric Gordon to be out, Morris, Covington, Batum. Those guys are making a lot of money, and you can definitely get younger and get new players on this team to pair around Paul George and Kawhi Leonard. All right, moving over to the NFL. Chase Young got his fifth-year option declined by the Washington Commanders. The former number 2 overall pick from the draft, 2020 NFL draft. Chase Young has had a very interesting career. 2020 rookie year, 15 games played, 7.5 sacks, 4 forced fumbles, 3 fumble recoveries, 44 tackles. He was on his, I don't remember exactly if he won Defensive Rookie of the Year, but he was, after that 2020 season, he was looked at as one of the most promising young defensive players, especially at the pass rusher position in the NFL. This guy was, if Joe Burrow didn't exist, this guy's going number 1 overall in that 2020 NFL draft. He was elite coming out of Ohio State. And in his rookie year, he played absolutely tremendous football. 2021, gets injured, tore his ACL, 1.5 sacks that year, 2 forced fumbles, 26 tackles. And then 2022, only played 3 games, still recovering from his ACL. No sacks, 5 tackles in 3 games. So they declined his fifth-year option. He's on the books for 1 more year, will be a free agent after this upcoming season. I think this guy's a lot of potential. It's just a matter of will he stay healthy. I think, when we've seen him a full season healthy, he's been very, very good. He's coming off of an ACL, has played 12 games over the last 2 seasons. 2023 is going to be a big year for Chase Young. I'd expect him, if he's healthy, to return to his dominant form and then get a big-time contract extension in the offseason. All right, finally, today we're going to do the WTF mock draft. Now, this one, do not take it seriously at all. This mock draft is based off of absolutely nothing. It is completely wild and completely random. This one is just like, let's get as crazy as possible with this mock draft. All right, so number 1, Carolina Panthers. Let's have them taking Will Levis. Levis has the second best odds right now to be the number 1 overall pick at plus 1,000. Bryce Young is basically a lock at minus 2,000 to be the number 1 overall pick. Levis, we talked about it yesterday. His odds shifting to be the number 1 pick and the number 2 pick yesterday, which those have changed today. He's not the favorite to be the number 2 pick anymore. He's the second overall favorite, plus 190. Tyree Wilson is the favorite at plus 150 to be the second overall pick. But there was that thing yesterday that Levis apparently has been telling people he's going to be the number 1 overall pick. So we're going to run with that. Carolina trades all the way up from 9. They trade DJ Moore, multiple first-round picks, second-round picks, and they trade up to draft Will Levis, a guy who could have potentially been there at number 9. Number 2, Texans, Tyree Wilson. Let's just not have them taking a quarterback, and let's have them taking not a Jalen Carter, not a Will Anderson. How about a Tyree Wilson from Texas Tech, in-state, the edge rusher from Texas Tech, going number 2. They don't trade out. They don't draft a quarterback. They don't draft one of the blue-chip defensive prospects, and they go with a Tyree Wilson here. Number 3 is the Cardinals. They don't trade out either. They're going to stay put. They're not going to draft Jalen Carter. They're not going to draft Will Anderson Jr. They're going to take Paris Johnson, the offensive tackle from Ohio State. Kyler Murray said this week he loves this guy. This is the guy that he'd want the Cardinals to draft. Some protection for him on the O-line. And let's run with that. Let's say Paris Johnson is that pick here at number 3 overall. He's the second overall favorite right now, plus 400 to be the number 3 overall pick. Number 4 is the Indianapolis Colts, and they just stay put here, and they get the best quarterback in the draft class. Bryce Young falls to them at number 4 in this scenario. I don't see this happening at all. Right, I think Bryce Young is going number 1 overall, but in this wild scenario, Bryce Young falls all the way to 4. Number 5 is Seattle. This is an interesting one. Charles Davis said today, right, NFL broadcaster, Seattle might take a corner with their 5th overall pick. Not a Will Anderson, not a Jalen Carter, not a Tyree Wilson, whichever guy is there at 5. What about a Devon Witherspoon, which is the pick I have here to Seattle? Not a pass rusher, not an Anthony Richardson at quarterback. What about a corner, another lockdown corner to pair for that Seattle in that secondary here at number 5? Number 6, the Lions make a trade. They trade with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. The Bucs move all the way up from 19. They trade 1950, a first next year, for number 6 overall. Probably not enough, to get a trade done in real life. But the Buccaneers trade all the way up here to 6, and they draft C.J. Stroud. Stroud fell all the way to 6. He's just sitting there, and Tampa realizes that they need a quarterback. Baker Mayfield's not the answer. Kyle Trask has not had any playing time in the NFL. Let's go get C.J. Stroud, a guy who is going to be a very good NFL quarterback. Number 7, the Raiders. They sit here and they get Will Anderson Jr., a guy who you could argue is the first or second best player that's not a quarterback in this draft class. He just falls there at number 7. Number 8, Falcons. Bijan Robinson, the running back from Texas. This one's been rumored a little bit here. I think if we pull up the odds here for the number 8 overall pick, Bijan Robinson's the favorite at plus 250 to go to Atlanta. So this one's not that crazy. I think 8 is a little high for a running back, but Bijan Robinson is easily the best offensive player in the draft. Number 9 is the Bears, and they get Jalen Carter. This is a guy who easily is the number 1 overall player, regardless of position in this draft class. The best defensive player in the draft falls to them at 9, and the Bears walk away from this draft and this offseason with one of the best off seasons. They trade the number 1 overall pick, move down to 9, get lots of assets, get DJ Moore, and then they get an elite pass rusher there at the 9th pick. 10, Eagles. They're going to trade with the Minnesota Vikings. The Vikings are going to trade pick 23, their first round pick next year, and Dalvin Cook. 2, in return, the Vikings get the 10th overall pick, and they draft Anthony Richardson. He's going to sit behind Kirk Cousins for this upcoming season, and he's going to take over next year as the quarterback of the Minnesota Vikings. Number 11, no quarterbacks left. I don't think the Titans reach on a Hendon Hooker. Peter Skoronski. This one's not a wild pick. They need offensive linemen. Number 12, Texans are up again. They passed on a quarterback with the first pick, and how about they just go all defense here, and they get Christian Gonzalez, another lockdown corner. This defense for the Texans is looking nice with Tyree Wilson, Christian Gonzalez, and then last year, obviously, getting Derek Stingley Jr. 13, Packers. Wide receiver, tight end. Those are both positions of need for the Packers. They go Broderick Jones, offensive tackle out of Georgia. I don't think it's a lock that the Packers take a skill position player at this pick. They haven't done it since like 2005. They haven't taken a wide receiver, a tight end. They haven't taken a skill position player in a long time. And with David Bakhtiari, coming off a lot of injuries, getting older on the last year of his deal, how about they go get a nice offensive tackle here from Georgia and Broderick Jones to be their offensive lineman of the future to help protect Jordan Love. I don't think it's a wild. Honestly, I wouldn't be surprised if they don't take a wide receiver or a tight end and they go an offensive tackle or an edge rusher in this year's draft with that 13th pick. 14, Patriots. This was a spot I was thinking that they could trade up. They could trade Mac Jones and they could trade up and get a quarterback. Or they could have traded for, maybe Trey Lance. But I have them taking Zay Flowers here. The first receiver off the board is not Jackson Smith-Njigba. It's going to be Zay Flowers from Boston College going here to the Patriots. 15, Jets. Offensive line has been one that has been mocked over and over and over that the Jets will take. How about they get the best receiver in the draft class in Jackson Smith and Jigba and pair him with Garrett Wilson, his former college teammate, Alan Lazard, McCole Hardman, and Aaron Rodgers has 2 elite receivers to throw the ball to. Garrett Wilson and then Jackson Smith and Jigba here at 15. 16 Commanders, Nolan Smith, the edge out of Georgia. This guy has the potential to be a really, really, really good edge rusher. The thing for him that a lot of people are mentioning is that he's a very light defensive lineman in terms of weight. He's compared to Hassan Reddick. There's not a lot of guys that are in the light 200s that are on the defensive line. All right, number 17, Steelers. Jordan Addison, the receiver from USC. I know they picked up Allen Robinson. They have Pickens and Deontay Johnson, and they could definitely, and they really should, in this year's draft, get O-linemen. But how about you get an offensive weapon here for Kenny Pickett, and then you have a really, really nice offensive skill group for Kenny Pickett here in Pittsburgh. All right, 18 and 19 is both the Lions because the Lions traded from 6 to 19, so they have back-to-back picks here. First one, 18, they get Joey Porter Jr., one of the best corners in this draft class. Go out there and protect in the secondary. And then 19, they get a replacement for TJ Hawkinson, and they get Dalton Kincaid, the tight end out of Utah. So another offensive weapon here for Jared Goff to go with Jameson Williams, Amon-Ra St. Brown, and DeAndre Swift. And they get a Dalton Kincaid. 20, Seattle, Hendon Hooker. I think it makes sense for them to draft a quarterback in this draft. First round, third, fourth, fifth round. Because Geno Smith is really on a 1-year deal, and you don't know what he's gonna do this upcoming season. They get Hendon Hooker here to either play this year or definitely play in the future. 21, Chargers, Michael Mayer, tight end out of Notre Dame. They could use another weapon for Justin Herbert, and how about a tight end, someone up in the middle of the field for Herbert. 22, Ravens, Quentin Johnston, wide receiver, TCU. Number 23 is the Eagles after they traded back from 10. Remember, they picked up Dalvin Cook, and they get the 23rd overall pick right here, and they're going to take Myles Murphy, the edge out of Clemson. 24, Jaguars take Brian Branch. 25, Giants, Deonte Banks. 26, Dallas Cowboys. They don't go wide receiver. They don't go tight end. They go offensive line. They go Darnell Wright from Tennessee. 27, I have the Bills and the Cardinals making a pretty wild trade here. I don't think this compensation is going to happen, but the Bills trade the 27th overall pick to the Cardinals for DeAndre Hopkins to go with Stephon Diggs and D-Hop and Gabe Davis. Josh Allen has easily the best wide receiver group in the NFL. And the Cardinals here at 27 take Lucas Van Ness, the edge out of Iowa. 28, Bengals, Isaiah Foskey, edge out of Notre Dame. 29, Saints, Darnell Washington, tight end from Georgia. Number 30, Brian Bresee, defensive tackle from Clemson. So the Eagles get 2 Clemson defensive linemen here in the first round. And then number 30, Jalen Hyatt, wide receiver from Tennessee, going to the Kansas City Chiefs. So that is the WTF mock. All right, remember, we're going to do one tomorrow. Thursday NFL draft tomorrow. Going to have the official mock draft coming out in the morning. This one's crazy. This one's fun. This one's let's get as crazy as possible with these picks and let's just get wild. Don't take any of this one seriously. This is not what I think will actually happen in the draft tomorrow. DeAndre Hopkins is probably going to get traded tonight. Like, he's probably going to get traded either today, Wednesday, or tomorrow at the draft. And the teams appear to be the Chiefs and the Bills are the teams that seem to be in the mix for Hopkins right now. I think there's still the potential that he goes to Baltimore with Odell Beckham Jr. and Lamar Jackson. So it's definitely a possibility. I do think it will happen. The DeAndre Hopkins trade, I had it here in this crazy mock that he goes to the Bills. It's the Bills or the Chiefs as finalists, but don't count out the Ravens potentially being in there. This news is not broken yet, but you did hear it here first. I just broke this DeAndre Hopkins news. All right, that's going to do it for this episode of the franchise. Tomorrow's NFL draft, we will be back tomorrow with the official mock draft. Make sure you are, got those notifications on. Make sure you're ready because I'm going to get every single pick of the mock draft tomorrow. All 31 picks of the first round are going to be correct. YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Amazon Music, TikTok, Twitter, Instagram, in the description of every single episode. Thank you guys so much for tuning in, and I'll see you tomorrow.